Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Tuesday evening slot, our regular Tuesday evening. And for those who will be watching this later, I hope you can learn something out of it. We've been going through a few different topics just recently, and we've just come out of a series on energy and cellular energy at that. And now we're going to be talking about those who uses cellular energy to the best of their ability, and that is children. And we actually want them to stay energetic. And I think we've learned how we can boost our energy to keep up with them, because, as you know, children tend to work a little bit like the Energizer Bunny, and they don't sleep, they just recharge. So let me share my screen, and we'll go through all the bits and pieces as to how do we keep our children healthy. Because after all, if we don't give the children a good grounding, they are going to carry on being sick adults. And we don't like sick children, and we definitely don't like sick adults. So maybe the question one should be asking is, do children need nutrition? Well, they all need nutrition, but do they need to supplement? And we're going to learn a little bit about that as we go along. So children's nutrition, the how, the why, the what. Nutrition for kids is based on the same principles as nutrition for adults. Now, bearing in mind that children are not just little adults. Children are different to adults in a lot of ways. Most importantly is the way that they're growing, because they're growing at a much faster rate than adults do, which means that their nutrition needs are similar but different to us adults. Everyone needs the same types of nutrients, such as vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Children, however, need different amounts of specific nutrients at different ages as they go through different growth spurts in their time. So the period between ages of 2 and 18 is known as the developmental years of life, and as a consequence is very, very important. During this period, children undergo a tremendous amount of growth and development, both physically as well as cognitively, in other words, mentally. Because of the amount of growth and development occurring at this stage in life, it is critical that children receive the nutrients they need to build a strong body and mind. Good nutrition and good health go hand in hand, and the better the foundation for a child, or for anything for that matter, you think of a building. The better the foundation, the better the building. Not only will this ensure they reach their physical potential, but also their intellectual, emotional, behavioral, and social goals as well. If you look around and you look at the news these days, people are starting to scratch their heads and go, what went wrong? What has happened to this world? Because people are losing it at a rapid rate. And I fully believe, and this is my personal opinion, that a lot of this has to do with nutrition. The nutrition that people receive, and probably more importantly, what they don't receive. And specifically, from a children's perspective, they haven't had a good grounding. Therefore, they're losing it. So we all know about children being picky eaters. I know I'm a classic one with that one. I always have been. But sometimes we need to let children choose their own foods as well, because you will be surprised if you give them options, what they will actually choose. Unfortunately, most data is showing that most children are not getting what they need from their diet. A recent study conducted by researchers in Australia shows that children aged 9 to 10 years old are receiving almost 50% of their daily energy requirements from junk foods that are high in fat, salt, and sugar, and consuming more than 150 grams of sugar per day. This is equivalent to about 38 teaspoons of sugar. How's that for a scary stat? And if you want to know how much sugar that is, take a drinking glass and take a teaspoon and count it out. You will be shocked how much sugar that actually equates to. In addition, 91% of children ate less than their recommended daily servings of vegetables. Another very scary stat. In the United States, children's intakes of added sugars, saturated and trans fatty acids exceeds recommendations in the dietary guidelines for Americans. And that, sadly, carries through into adulthood as well. At the same time, they fail to meet the recommended levels of whole grains, vegetables, dairy foods, and nutrients of concern. The guidelines also outline a fruit and vegetable intake target of 7 to 9 servings for kids older than 6 and teens. But a report published by the US Centers for Disease Control, the USDC, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, found that adolescents only consumed an average of 2.3 servings or 2 to 3 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, and only 25 to 33% of the recommended amount. So they're getting extremely small amounts of what they're needing. And I think it was Jim McAfee who said that most children's vegetables that they receive are in the form of chips or French fries. In South Africa, there appears to be a general lack of variety in the diet, borne out by the high prevalence of certain micronutrient deficiencies. And there's a whole lot of different reasons for this. Amongst South African children, there is a widespread lack of adequate vitamin A and iron intake, and approximately 45% of children have a low zinc status, which tends to impede their growth in a lot of cases. This is worrying and an ongoing concern. While children's nutrition is based on the same principles as nutrition for adults, children need different amounts of specific nutrients during the developmental years. So what are the top nutrients of concern for children? What do they need? Let's have a look at some of that research. So according to the USDA, children ages 4 to 18 years need between 1 to 2 cups of fruit and 1 to 3 cups of vegetables daily, equivalent to about 7 to 9 servings, depending on the particular types of fruits and vegetables. Now, think about your children, or probably more importantly, your children's friends. How much of this are they actually getting? In South Africa, most people do not consume adequate amounts of fruits and vegetables daily. In fact, intake of fruit and vegetables is below recommendations for all ages. So in other words, for adults as well. And I know in my diet, a lot of these things are lacking. Fruits and vegetables are important sources of vitamins and minerals. However, they also provide antioxidants that are critical for immunity and protection from oxidative stress. Now, sadly, in my line of work, I get to see sick people on a daily basis in hospital. And it saddens me because a lot of the cases that I see in hospital are there because of diet-related conditions, and they shouldn't be there. And it's very, very frustrating to be able to see how people are, I don't think they know different. And more importantly, they don't want to know different because they're happy to be sick, it seems, in my opinion anyway. Because I often see people having repeat stays in hospital. And I really don't know what the solution is on how to educate people more about how they should take care of themselves. Active children, such as those who play sports, have a high metabolic activity, making antioxidants even more important for protecting cells from oxidative damage. And this goes for athletes as well, of all ages. Also, since children are often exposed to germs at school and in the playground, providing them with nutrients to support their immunity may help reduce the risk of becoming sick. So we know schools and play schools are germ pools of note. Have a look at what comes about over there, because you've got children from all different types of backgrounds, and they love to share their germs with each other. On the plus side, it is good to build the immune system, but they need the tools to boost that immune system. So supplementing with fat-soluble antioxidants such as carotenoids, vitamins A, D, and E, and water-soluble antioxidants like vitamin C and polyphenols, including flavonoids, may all play a critical role in your child's health and immunity and can form an important part of their diet. The question is, are they forming an important part of their diet? So, are happy, healthy children also well behaved? In most cases, yes, they are. It is established that omega-3 fatty acids are a crucial component of cognitive development in children. In other words, brain food. They are used for building the membranes of new neurons, which is critical for a developing new nervous system. And therefore, these things are critical from not just birth, but in fact from before conception. And the sad reality is most pregnant moms are not getting enough omega-3. And you can see this later on in life. DHA in particular makes up about 15% of all fatty acids in the frontal cortex, this is this part here, of the brain, and is involved in messaging and signaling processes. But did you know that omega-3s can affect behavior as well? And there's been some very interesting cases and tests on this. And they've done these tests on various diverse groups, and more specifically on children in juvenile detention places, sort of like a juvenile prison, and my apologies, and orphanages. And they've also tried it on prisoners and taxi drivers. These are very interesting results. A report published in the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology journal, huge big title, last June describes how omega-3 fatty acids can affect levels of serotonin, which is a hormone that regulates cognitive functions, mood, decision-making processes, social behavior, and impulsive behavior, and therefore is very good for children with ADD and ADHD. EPA, which is one of your omegas, helps increase the serotonin levels, and DHA helps to make serotonin receptors more accessible to serotonin, both of which aid in improving the positive effects of serotonin in the brain. And as we've said on more than one occasion, it's sort of kind of pointless if you're eating food and your body's not able to absorb it and utilize it. Same with your supplements. Your body can't absorb them, use them, you really are wasting your time and your money. In addition, a recent study suggests that omega-3 supplementation could play a role in learning ability. And on a personal note over there, since I've started taking omega-3s on a regular basis, it has made a huge difference for my memory, even though I'm not a child anymore, although I'm a child at heart. In the study, researchers provided a daily 600 milligram omega-3 supplement to children aged 7 to 9 years. Among those whose reading skills were in the bottom 20th percentile, literacy improved over the course of the 4-month study compared to the control group taking a daily placebo. While more research is needed to confirm the findings, the study results are promising and highlight the importance of all fatty acids in the frontal cortex of the brain and is involved in messaging and signaling processes of adequate intakes of omega-3s during the developmental years. And sadly, children and a lot of adults are not getting enough of these things because mostly they come from fish. Speak to your friends, find out how often they eat fish, what sort of fish they get, and how are they preparing it. Because all of those things make a difference. Currently, there are no formal guidelines for the amount of omega-3 fatty acids that children should consume. However, the USDA recommends 85 to 225 grams of seafood, including fatty fish such as salmon, tuna, and mackerel, which are rich in omega-3s, per week, depending on the child's age. Think back to when you had children that you were bringing up and your grandchildren now. How often is your family eating fish every week, specifically salmon, tuna, and mackerel? It's actually quite a scary thought because I know how often we eat fish in our household. I try and do it at least once a week, but yeah, they're talking 3 times per week or more. So you need to have a look and see all of that. Meeting these recommendations for intakes of omega-3 rich fish per week will equate to approximately 250 to 500 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids per day. Despite the importance of omega-3 for children, few are getting enough servings of fish in their diet. A recent study in South Africa found that children in general are eating higher amounts of saturated fats and insufficient amounts of polyunsaturated fats, particularly the omega-3 rich sources. This is true even in coastal communities who have greater access to fish, potentially rich in important omega-3 fats. This points to an obvious deficiency that may be undermining our children's health and development. The next thing we're talking about here is protein. How much protein does your child need? We often equate protein intake with muscle. However, most people are surprised to hear that protein does more than just build muscle. The protein we eat, or more explicitly, the amino acids these proteins provide, is also used to make enzymes, skin, hair, and bones. Protein really is the source of life. For adults, as well as growing kids, it is important to get enough protein in the diet, along with the right balance of nutrients and energy. Balancing protein intake with energy from carbohydrates and healthy fats ensures that the protein we eat is made available for muscle maintenance, new cell growth, and tissue repair, rather than just burned for energy. And remember, when we're talking carbohydrates, we are talking complex carbohydrates, not the empty sugar-laden carbohydrates that most people are getting on a daily basis. A balanced and varied diet also ensures that nutrients are available to help convert these amino acids into the structural components and muscles in our body. Remember, there are 22 amino acids that we need in protein to make it a complete protein. 9 of them are essential, meaning that we have to get them from our diet. The balance can be created by your body, providing your body has the correct tools to create them. Kids, in general, require more protein per kilogram of body weight than adults to support their faster growth rate. Because if we all continue to grow at the rate that a baby does, we'd all be giants. Therefore, it's important to make sure they get the right amount of protein each day, and also the right type of protein each day. Too little and the body will break down its muscles to supply the body with the amino acids it needs. Too much? Well, that just becomes fat. Now, the Institute of Medicine recommends that 10 to 30% of the kilojoules a child over the age of 4 takes in should come from protein. Needs may increase as they reach adolescence or participate in sport, or both. So what is the recommended amount of protein? As you can see here, in the 2 to 3 year age group, 13 grams of protein is recommended, 4 to 8, 19 grams, 9 to 13, 34 grams. Girls, 14 to 18, need 46 grams, and boys in the same age group need 52 grams. That is a lot of protein. So the other thing then is, protein is, we're talking about the flesh and the muscles of the body. And then we go to the part that keeps us up, which is the skeleton. While we often think of bone issues as a condition that affects older adults, the groundwork for bone health is laid during the childhood years. And your bone is developing from an early age, and from the age of around about 25, starts to deteriorate. That's quite a young age. So your children, your grandchildren need the best groundwork for their bones now while they are still young, because later on in life, they will thank you and they will have healthier, stronger bones. I work in the orthopedic department, as most people know, and I see bone fractures on a very regular basis. Some of them I can understand. For me, the scary ones are the number of children with broken bones, and they haven't fallen out of a tree or fallen off a bicycle. They've been running around playing soccer or just playing in the playground. They trip over their feet and they break a bone. That shouldn't happen that easily. The key message from leading bone and nutrition experts on World Osteoporosis Day, which is October the 20th, just by the way, was that the right nutrition throughout life can make a difference in bone health. And as I often say to my patients, if you had to cut through a piece of bone, so use your imagination, think of the femur, which is the big bone in your thigh. If you cut through there, it should look like the inside of a crunchy chocolate. That is healthy bone. And healthy bone should have a little bit of flexibility to enable us to work as a shock absorber, basically. If you cut through that bone and it's an unhealthy or osteoporotic bone, it will look a little bit like the inside of an Aero chocolate. I will give you permission to go and get some of these things, even if it's just to break them so that you can see what bone should look like. Peak bone mass and development is genetically predetermined. So unfortunately, a lot of the bone health, especially for your children and grandchildren, is your fault, good or bad. However, the right nutrition can help children and adolescents achieve their full genetic potential for optimal bone health. In fact, according to the International Osteoporosis Foundation, a 10% increase in peak bone mass in children could reduce the risk of osteoporotic fracture during adult life by 50%. That is a lot. Adolescence is an especially critical period of skeletal development, during which more than half of bone mass is accumulated. And this usually happens in the age from around about 14 to about 17, 18, where there's quite a bit of rapid growth. And you've seen how your children suddenly spring up. And those who go from shorties to quite tall end up with stretched bones to a certain extent. So there's a lot of things happening during that relatively short period in a person's life. A recent review that summarizes the role that nutrition plays in the development and maintenance of a healthy skeleton describes some of the key nutrients that are needed during this stage. Obviously, calcium is one of them, but calcium is not only a major building block for our skeleton, but also plays important roles in nerve and muscle functioning. Children of the ages 4 to 8 years should get about 800 milligrams per day of calcium, while older children and teens aged between 9 to 18 should aim for around about 1,300 or 1,300 milligrams per day. If you are having a balanced diet with the correct calcium vegetables, preferably organic because they're going to have a much better source of calcium, and have a good dairy intake, we're talking milk and cheese and yogurt, etc., you're going to get about 900 odd milligrams of calcium per day. So as we can see over here, the 4 to 8-year-olds shouldn't have a problem. The 9 to 18-year-olds will definitely have a problem. And theoretically, it should not be difficult to meet these levels, since a 250 ml glass of milk or a cup of yogurt can provide 300 milligrams of calcium just on its own. But when we're talking milk, it should be fresh from the factory, not fresh from the supermarket. However, achieving this daily recommendation continues to be a challenge for most children. Various studies have highlighted that children in South Africa are not achieving the basic recommended levels of calcium intake. In one particular group, it was shown that from the 40 most commonly consumed foods, full cream milk was ranked 8th, and the only other calcium foods were custard, very high in sugar, ice cream, very high in sugar, and low-fat yogurt, very high in sugar. So, as you can see, calcium, not very well consumed. Now, vitamin D plays 2 key roles in the development and maintenance of bones. Number one, it assists in the calcium absorption from food in the intestine. And number 2, it ensures the appropriate renewal and remineralization of bone. Insufficient intakes of this sunshine vitamin is so prevalent among youth that health authorities recommend supplements be given to infants and young children to help meet the recommended dietary allowance of 400 IU for infants under 1 and 600 IU for children over 1 and teens. Protein makes up about 50% of the volume of bone, and a daily supply of dietary protein is necessary for building the structure of bone. Inadequate protein intakes during childhood can impair the production and activity of IGF-1, which is the insulin-like growth factor, which is a hormone that stimulates bone formation. I think I'm going to stop right there because we've got about 7 minutes left, but I would like to give a bit of time for some questions and answers if possible, and then we can start this section again next week. So I'm going to stop my sharing. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Please feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask away before I stop recording.
Thank you very much, Sean. That was very interesting. And I just thank God for somehow we did the right thing with our grandkids and our kids. But thank you very much. I think if our kids were younger now, toddlers, I would have done differently with the knowledge I have. Thank you, Nila. Thanks, Sean.
And the thing is with the diets that we won't talk about age right now, but the diets that we had a number of years ago, we were fortunate and blessed to have access to more natural foods. Children played outside. They climbed trees. They ran around barefoot. They rode bicycles. They didn't sit inside in front of a screen for extended periods of time during the day, watching TV, playing games on their phones, because sadly today, children cannot be children anymore. There's not really any parks that they can go to. How many children do you know of that can even climb a tree and run around barefoot outside? I know just from my kids, yes, we're fortunate in that we live in a relatively safe area where they can play outside, but they don't climb trees. They do play outside whenever I chase them out, but it's not something that they want to do. Give me a choice of being outside or inside, I'll take outside any day, unless it's up to here with rain or snow, but I'll happily go outside and play around more than stay inside. So the result is they're not getting the strength conditioning that their bones need for strengthening of the bones. They're not getting the agility that they should have, and they're not getting the vitamin D from the sunshine that they should have. So they're losing out all the way. And I think of kids in cities especially, where in a lot of times they're cooped up in flats and apartment buildings. They're surrounded by concrete, the concrete jungle. They don't have access to trees, to grass, to even the beach in a lot of cases, if you think of the city dwellers. And they're falling short very, very rapidly. And it's a problem. All right, I'm going to stop recording.